Want to chime in on what's happening with your favorite KFAN program? Like maybe perhaps mention how I just totally messed up that last segment and pissed everybody off. Well, lucky for you, you can make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryant text line. Let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard message and data rates apply.
It's not your fault. So let's continue Vikes Bites with this Kyle Shanahan, Dan Orlovsky thing that Nordo had pulled up, and then we erroneously went to break. But you were distracted, man, and unacceptably so. So we're going to continue with Vikes Bites provided by
Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef, and what ended up being a tease for this segment. Excited to have it. Dan Orlovsky via ESPN, I believe last evening, had this to say about Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers potentially being outcoached by our guys.
How many times in your guys' life do you think Kyle Shanahan has been outcoached?
Oh, like less 3 or 4.
Definitely the last time they played Brian Flores last year.
I think Kyle was outcoached yesterday by both Flores and Kevin O'Connell. I think Kevin O'Connell has absolutely gotten himself into the conversation for as good a breadcrumb layer as there is in the NFL. Like, I get into this formation, I get into this look, and I want to see what you do with it defensively because I have that second or third or fourth option to go off of it. Really, both of the touchdown passes from Sam Darnold yesterday were plays that he ran beforehand. That he was like, okay, what are you in? How did you align to it? And this is what I can go to. I think that you can make the case. The Vikings are as offensive and defensively well coached as anybody in the NFL.
How about that? That's Dan Orlovsky from yesterday, and he pointed to the idea, and it was talked about a bit, that Kevin O'Connell set up like that 97-yarder off of a play that he's run in the past to get the look that he wanted in that moment, lets it fly in the shadow of his own end zone. The Naylor TD and a bit of simplistic yet trickery involved with the motion of Naylor, getting the look they want. And of course, defensively now, we've seen it 2 years in a row where Brian Flores has found his way, albeit statistically, you look at a box score and you're like, Purdy had a pretty damn good game, but he was frustrated in the right moment, specifically on third downs. 2 of 10 were the Niners. Outcoached Kyle Shanahan by Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores.
It was apparent in certain facets of the game, as we mentioned yesterday, without going that far down the road. They outthought the thinkers. They outthought the thinkers because Kyle Shanahan, and he is a new defensive coordinator. Steve Wilkes was the coordinator last year, made an egregious mistake with a 0 blitz in the Vikings game, and there were other problems, so they moved on. But that is one of the more well-respected coaching staffs in the National Football League. So to get Shanahan out of his running game like they did last year, he's stubborn with that. Kyle is stubborn with that. He'll be down 2 scores, and he'll stick with it. Run Mason left, run McCaffrey right, run so-and-so left. Play action, oh, wow, you guessed run, and now I got Juwan Jennings for a 25-yard hit into your territory. Run 12, run 0, run 1, pass 10. He's just, they outthought the thinkers. It was very interesting to hear Orlovsky say that. I had not heard that. But with the breadcrumbs, I love how he laid that out, that where he's laying out breadcrumbs and it metaphorically could be cheese. It could be here, here's some Swiss and here's some cheddar and here's some sharp cheddar and here's some I
could eat.
And I feel like a quesadilla right now. Here's some grated Mexican cheese with 4 different types of cheeses. And he lays them out for you to see which one you take. Because on the Naylor touchdown, and you pointed out this yesterday, so I went and watched it. They against the New York Giants, and we talked about this last week. They start with Justin Jefferson in the backfield. They flare him out to the right, and the percentages are they're going to throw the ball to him. So Jalen Naylor, he's slot right. He fires off looking like he's going to block. Well, Cordell Flott, the corner who was on Naylor responsibility, he bit run block 10 out of 10. Well, that's a gotcha play.
He took the Asiago.
He took the Asiago cheese on the gotcha play. The quesadilla was good, and it was an easy touchdown. Let's fast forward to this week. The cheese was laid out. The Asiago was laid out. The focaccia was laid out. Well, now, so what's O'Connell do with the breadcrumbs this week? He motions Naylor to inside the tight end. So he's between the tight end and Brian O'Neill. Well, he comes off the line. What's up, BG? He comes off the line. Charvarius Ward would have bet everything he had, you're run blocking.
Yep.
And he bit. And Naylor wasn't run blocking. And there he goes for another touchdown. So that was interesting to hear Dan Orlovsky lay that out the way he did. And we're excited for the scribe to lay things out the way he does. He's Ben Goessling, who joins 9 to noon weekly each and every Tuesday. And it's courtesy of Standard Heating and Air.
Yeah.
Standard Heating and Air back in the mix, BG.
Yes, they are. Very glad to have them along for another year. Had a great year with them last year, and glad they're back on board. Grateful for their support this year.
Yeah, Standard Heating and Air. Thank you very much.
Sounded like everybody in the stadium was looking for Standard Heating and Air to stay a little cool on Sunday, including Trent Williams and the Niners, huh?
Yeah, it was. Kevin O'Connell talked about that after the game, which is not something I expected to hear in a conversation about U.S. Bank Stadium. But yeah, obviously,
unless he had a say in it.
Well, there could be that. I mean, there's always that game of if you want to keep the doors open. I remember when it opened, there was talk about, because they went in and did all of the wind studies of if the doors are open, is this going to make any kind of a difference? Blair Walsh was spending a lot of time getting some maps of those things after he did all of that at TCF Bank Stadium as well. It was interesting to hear that in an indoor stadium that was a factor, but you could feel it, I think. I mean, I think when those doors are open, and it's a cooler day, which I expect it will be on Sunday, you do notice a little bit of a difference with that. So the fact that it played the other way is not something I expected would happen, but you certainly could feel it throughout the course of the day.
Standard Heating and Air Conditioning, standardheating.com, providing the comfort you deserve since 1930. And that's the least we can do for you for picking up some sponsorship with 9 to noon and KFAN, specifically with one of our very favorites, the Scribe, Ben Goessling, who covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune, startribune.com. Don't forget about the newsletter. Don't forget about the podcast, Access Vikings, and or the Twitter spot at Ben Goessling. Thank you, Standard Heating and Air. Well, since we went down that road out of the gate, you've covered all of the games at U.S. Bank Stadium.
I have missed one.
Okay. Do you happen to remember the month?
I do. It was the New Year's Eve game last year.
That's all we needed to hear.
I had COVID. That was the only game I've ever missed.
Oh, you got bid.
Yep.
Well, sorry to hear that. But with that said, so therefore it's not going to be steamy on New Year's Day.
Right.
So that was so by far the stickiest, steamiest, most humid feeling at U.S. Bank Stadium of all the games, forget the events, all the games I and or we have been to.
Right.
Now, if you have the belief, and there was more in the Star Tribune today, in a story, part of the story, I think, or maybe it was a tweet that I read, because your story was the analysis of the Vikings' investments in defensive players paying off. And we're going to get to that momentarily. So maybe it was a tweet from the presser yesterday where O'Connell spoke a lot about conditioning.
Yep.
And there was a lot of conditioning talk around here last week.
Yes, there was.
Well, there's no way is Trent Williams 10 of 10 with conditioning. The last time we saw him on Monday Night Football, my man was walking to the locker room to get IVs, to get an IV in a game they're going to win.
Right.
Ain't no way Brandon Ayuk is 10 of 10 with conditioning because of the totality of the off season they both missed chasing money.
Yeah.
Maybe there are some others. Maybe they caught some others on film or like, you know what, maybe this guy's not in the greatest shape in the world. So,
short week too.
Short week with travel and earlier time
10
zone.
10 a.m. start for
the
them.
whole thing that's mattered over the course of time in the National Football League. So, I mean, maybe the air conditioning wasn't functioning, the way it was supposed to function in there.
Yeah.
I mean, you had players talking to Blake Cashman, as he told me after the game, and we played it yesterday 9 to noon, where Niner players were coming up to him during the game, paraphrasing, saying, "Dog, is it always this hot in here?
Yeah.
Dog, why is it so steamy in here?"
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it was soupy and steamy and thick and it impacted the game.
Yeah.
And we'll just leave it right there.
It did. And, I suppose, too, you're not dealing with that type of humidity typically in California. So, however that comes about, that's probably a change for the 49ers as well. But, yeah, I asked a lot of the conditioning questions yesterday, writing about it a little bit today. Maybe it's my distance coach thing that's interested in this. But Kevin O'Connell has talked enough about play style, about the way he wants this team to function. And when they beat the Giants, he said in his victory speech, we were the better prepared team. We were the better conditioned team.
Right.
Whether or not that was said with it in the back of his mind that Brian Dable, not Kevin O'Connell, won Coach of the Year in 2022. Not for me to say, but did that thought cross my mind? It might.
Right.
But
I didn't think of that.
Yeah, it was whatever the motivation was. It certainly, I think, is something he has wanted to emphasize, and you see it in the fourth quarter of a game like that, in the third quarter, really, where you have all of these players that are fresher and probably better conditioned that are able to tip that game. I thought
Trent Williams almost had to tap out.
Yeah.
Bursic, in adroit fashion, noticed it, put it on the call, and he's like, to Ben and I, he's like, well, look at Trent Williams. I mean, hands are on the knees. And I never, with football immortality, HOF would be like he laid an egg, took plays off or whatever.
Yeah.
But he actually may have gone 50% on a few plays to catch his breath. And one of them might have been when Pat Jones got around him for a sack.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to see Pat Jones do some of the things he did, whether it was the spin move or I think the one where he kind of just bullied him, that was not something you see happen to Trent Williams very often. And and O'Connell talked about this yesterday. He said it was a good indicator of where I hoped we would be at this point. And this commitment they have made to playing a certain style, they did that, I think, with their eyes open, knowing this is going to be more physically taxing, probably more on the offense because it changes the way you're playing offensively more so than the defensive side of things. But on the defensive side, when they're on the field for like 19 minutes in the first half, I'm kind of thinking, okay, the 49ers eventually, they've landed enough body blows that they're going to have one of these drives that breaks. They go 87 yards and take 9 minutes off the clock and everybody's gassed and that kind of tips the game. That didn't happen in a way that cost the Vikings in the second half. They had a lot of drives. They certainly held the ball, I think, for 33, 34 minutes. But the Vikings were the one at the end of the game that had the long drive that kind of allowed them to lean on the 49ers and take advantage of, the physical state of it, the conditioning state of things. It's not a way we've seen them play. Right. It's not a way, certainly, we've seen them play under Kevin O'Connell. And the fact that they did that and everything kind of worked together for them to really beat the 49ers at their own game, I thought was pretty significant.
It was an unbelievable drive, the 6:46 off the clock, and you're working with the Nailers and the Brandon Powell third down conversions. And one thing, kind of talking about that though, steamy day, conditioning, all of that.
Air conditioning turned off.
Week one, 68 plays for the Giants offense, 51 for the Vikings. On Sunday, 67 for the Niners, 54 for our guys.
We ran 54?
Yeah. We ran 54.
One for 97. That probably has an effect.
Do you think that, despite the victories, like good results, tremendous play, we're lauding Cashman, right? And the sacks are adding up, 11 of them. Patrick Jones off to an incredible start, all of that. Do you think that's something that Kevin O'Connell, regardless of the victories, is saying, I kind of want to flip that, actually.
Yeah.
Like that's, this disparity is something that I don't want to have to be sustainable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he brought it up a little bit yesterday, saying I want us to be on the field a little more often because it is that complementary football thing. You don't typically associate with the offensive coaches. You think they're just in the lab designing all the fancy plays, fancy concepts, and he certainly had a number of those on Sunday where he was kind of in his bag with some of the play designs. But I think there's also a realization that if you can hold the ball, change the complexion of the game as a result of that, both as the fact that it's taking a toll on the defense and it means that a high-powered offense is not on the field, it does help you change what is going on in the field and help you win the game. So, yes, I do think that's going to be a focus, is trying to win that time of possession battle a little bit more often. I think the degree to which he's talked about these things this year is different. And
well, it kind of reminds me of 2022 where you get off to that start and every single week, and we could nitpick these first two games too, right? The turnovers in particular.
Sure.
And after each and every game, it was, but we won the game.
Right.
But we won the game. But we won the game. And that feels very similar. Last year, much different, of course.
Yeah.
1-score losses versus the 1-score wins. But I feel like we're in that stage where it's like we're getting to learn while still having success.
Yeah, and he talked about that. Just you get to correct your mistakes after being 1-0 or being 2-0, which I think is a different feeling than being 0-2. There are times, I think, where you do learn more, or you internalize the things that you learn more when you have failed or when you've lost. I mean, just as human beings, we tend to remember the bad moments more than the good ones. So as a teaching tool, sometimes that can be helpful, but nobody wants to make that trade. I mean, you'd much rather
take
be
the win
dealing
every
with
time.
take the win and figure it out from there.
And how about C.J. Ham? C.J. Ham fumbles in the opener. He's got a block punt. What's Showtime going to do?
Right.
I mean, what's Jones going to? What's his make good coming against these Texans? 3 touchdowns. I hope that's the case.
They're killing teams. I mean, let's just be straight about it. They're killing teams. Now we can play but there were 7 plays to Bellinger, Slayton that were Jones was off target. Slayton had 2 drops. Bellinger had 2. That would have been first downs. Okay, so maybe they wouldn't have killed somebody. They were never losing to the Giants. They were never losing to the 49ers.
Yeah.
They were never losing that game. Okay, and it ended up being a 1-score game. But I mean, they kind of killed them a fair amount of the game.
Yeah.
And
probably could have been more lopsided.
Right. And if Darnold doesn't throw the interception to Warner, which is a talker in its own right, or Jones doesn't fumble at the 2, the blowout's on. So the point being here is self-awareness. And I'm playing off what you guys were just talking about. Self-awareness by O'Connell, Flores, and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. And you and I have talked about the general manager before.
Right.
If you have a stock trading background, and you look at picks late Friday, all Saturday as the NASDAQ, why do I want to mess around in the NASDAQ when I can go get players who perform at the New York Stock Exchange?
Sure. Yep.
I have past performances of Grenard, Van Ginkel, Cashman, Gilmore, Griffin, and so on, of what they've done in the NYSE.
Yeah.
So, yes, you can win in the NASDAQ, but that's more of a crapshoot. So I have past performances here. So instead of jacking around every single year on a Saturday of the draft and trying to be Einstein, I'm going to take what I know to be proven at this level.
Yeah.
That's self-awareness. O'Connell and Flores with overplaying defensive players last year, granted because they had to.
Yeah.
But now I'm looking at these snap counts. Harrison Phillips played maybe 50% of the game week 1 against the Giants. He played 44, and I'm focusing on the big guys because they have a tendency to get to get most tired fastest. Phillips 44, Tillery 38, Bullard 37 snaps, Jahad Ward. How about that? He had 17 snaps, 2 quarterback hits, and a fumble recovery, and Jonah Williams gave him 23.
That rotation is so good right now. I think it's. I forget who it is. It might be Van Ginkel's the only guy that's played in, they're all less than 70%, but I think Van Ginkel's like 68-ish, 69.
You mean in the front 7?
Yeah, in the front 7 in totality. Right. It's unbelievable the rotation that B-Flow's getting right now.
So the self-awareness, to land the plane here.
Sure.
Is now that happens with should happen with everybody, but O'Connell with the way he's running the ball with Chandler and Jones, Kwesi with everything I just laid out, and Flores not being afraid to take reps off players to put others in who may not be as good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think over the years here, we have seen people kind of go about things the way of, I'm going to win the way I want to win.
Right.
The style I want to play is how we're going to do it. And there can be a value in saying, this is what we hang our hat on. This is the thing that this is a non-negotiable for us, and this is going to be our identity. But if
they still
not,
have that.
Yeah. But
with the way they're doing it.
Yes. And you have to realize that there are times where you have to complement, you have to diversify, especially if it's not a 12-year veteran at quarterback that's been in this system for a long time, that when it is a change there and you're trying to help Sam Darnold, you're trying to kind of just be more efficient, some of the things they wanted to do last year that they didn't, there seems to be an awareness of we have to have more than one club in the bag here, and the better you can do with being able to win different ways. That's probably a Belichick thing for O'Connell, too, I would guess.
And Flores.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Yeah. I mean, that thing that everybody always talked about with Belichick is whatever way it would take.
Right.
You know, the game where the
we
Patriots
needed DB
here,
in the Super Bowl. Oh, Troy Brown. We got 2 weeks to get him ready.
Or the game, I think it was 2006, they came here. And we don't want to mess with the Williams ball. We're just going to throw it every single play.
Monday Night Football.
Yes.
And they killed him.
Yes.
The only touchdown the Vikings had in that game was a Weldy Moore punt return, I think.
Yeah. So there is that. The Belichick thing is, hey, whatever we have to do, I don't care if it matches my identity. I don't care how it looks. We're going to do that. So I would bet that for both of those guys, that's an influence.
Right. Ben Goessling at Ben Goessling via Twitter. Thank you, Standard Heating and Air. So with the Vikings bent out of the gate, 11 sacks for the team, most in the league. We just touched on, the modus operandi being that of substitution and faith and belief in fresh players. So, like, take that, but what else is leading to an average of 5.5 sacks a game?
Yeah. Well, I think it's been interesting that they're doing that without the blitzes this year. And really, I mean, they blitzed more than anybody in the league, but when they blitzed last year, and blitz is here having the colloquial meaning of 5 or more, not the Brian Flores more technical version of off-ball linebacker. When I say blitz, I'm just talking about 5 or more for now.
Well, they blitzed 11 times versus the Giants.
Yeah.
I'm gonna figure out how many versus the Niners.
It was a lot less overall. I think against the Giants, percentage-wise, it was the lowest it's ever been with Brian Flores as the coordinator, and it wasn't a lot against the 49ers either. So some of it is they'll still show a lot of those looks. You'll have 6 or 7 guys on the line, but they bail out of things. I mean, one of the first plays of the game, Harrison Smith is up near the line and then bails into a cover 2, pretty much right at the snap. So a lot of what they're doing is making it so that the quarterback has to hold the ball an extra split second, and they probably have better pass rushers. They have a deeper group of pass rushers. I think that also helps, but there's so much confusion about who's coming and who's not that you don't always have to send 6 if they're blocking no one. And you could still get a free look from somebody in a 4-man rush because they committed a blocker to somebody who dropped into coverage. That has had a big effect, too. I think there's just a lot of things with this scheme that quarterbacks have not figured out. And really, the first, super experienced quarterback they're going to see is Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's C.J. Stroud this week, obviously an incredibly talented quarterback. The Packers will see if it's Jordan Love or Malik Willis, but either way, you're not getting a guy that has this deep encyclopedia of concepts and plays and all of this kind of stuff until you go to London and see Aaron Rodgers. And I think that has had an effect on what some of these quarterbacks are facing and what they're doing in response.
They blitzed 20 times. So they blitzed a little less than a third of the time against the 49ers.
That's way down.
So with this blitz, is there any aspect, because at some point I wanted to ask you if Stephon Gilmore has just popped into your head at all through 2, and there were a couple instances where he stuck out to me. There was one where he had trouble turning around on Ayuk. It was kind of a curl route, and Ayuk just faster to the bit.
Yep.
And at this stage, kind of gun for hire territory for Gilmore. Maybe his defensive player of the year days. Not maybe, they are behind it.
Sure.
But all the same, I'm curious when it comes to blitzing and it comes to what we're seeing from Flores' defense thus far. He's shown the confidence in Gilmore where he's been out there for almost every snap through 2 games, and the ability maybe to play and just know that you have solid veteran presence in the secondary. Maybe that's leading him to believe, I don't need to send a second guy. I know Stephon might not be as fast as he was 5 years ago, but I know 100% he's going to be in the right spot, and I'm going to take my chances with that. And through 2, that's kind of feeling how it's played out with a guy like Gilmore in the mix now.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think there's certainly a lot of trust in him. I mean, you see them kind of moving him around. He's not doing like a full shadow of receivers, but they will start him on the side of whoever the top receiver is. It was Malik Neighbors in week 1. It was a lot of Brandon Ayuk last week against the 49ers, and we'll see whether it's Nico Collins or Stephon Diggs on Sunday. But they have been doing more of that, kind of the old roads closed thing that Zim used to do, where it's let's put it, and this was a Belichick thing all the time too. We're going to have a guy shadow. It's not completely that, but it is more of this is our best cover corner. We're going to put him in a position to be covering their best receiver more often. So there's certainly a lot of trust there, I think, just in the experience level and the way he's played over the years that still shows up in the way they're using him.
I'm going to add a layer to that, and I'm bringing it up with O'Connell today about 40 minutes from now, is the rush has been so good and so unpredictable that what's the deepest shot taken against the Vikings this year? I have no idea. How many bombs, how many over the tops have we seen? None.
Yeah.
Because quarterbacks and coordinators, they're not at a stage of the season where they're going to put quarterbacks on 7-step drops, like Darnold out of the end zone.
Right.
Okay. We haven't seen one of those at all this year. Well, why? Because the rush is so good and it's so unpredictable that Gilmore and Griffin have been afforded the opportunity. Because into week 1, you and I talked about this. I'm like, all right, well, I think I brought it up with O'Connell. All right, well, Gilmore didn't do anything in the offseason except his own stuff.
Right.
Jack Griffin did, but then he got hurt.
Right.
So he was down for a month. Well, it behooves offensive coordinators to make sure those guys can run.
Yeah.
Specifically, Gilmore is 33. Well, you don't have to worry about them running if there are no 7-step drops, deep shots, because they're just not taking them because they don't want their quarterbacks hit. So that, in essence, is helping Gilmore and Griffin run themselves into shape.
Yeah, I think that's right. And they have done some of this. I mean, when it was working last year, they were doing a lot of that too, where you just didn't see the over-the-top shots because people wanted to get rid of the ball and check it down as quickly as they did. And then eventually that pass rush wasn't getting home anymore. People started to figure things out. And it was, we can take shots over the top and we'll challenge Caleb Evans and Mekhi Blackman and some of those younger corners.
Yeah.
I think this scheme seems to have even more unpredictability to it, where they're still capable of bringing the house, and they can at times. Cam Bynum talked about this on Sunday, that if we want to blitz, that's still all there.
Yep.
But they have more ways to do it that just creates that little bit of uncertainty that by the time you say, okay, we are going to take a shot, the rush is probably already home.
Right.
Or you say, I don't want to worry about this rush. I'm not going over the top. I'm not going to call these concepts that take forever to develop.
Right.
So
that's
a
what
lot
I'm getting
of this works together.
And in essence, or in tune with it, Gilmore and Griffin, you want to make them run.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm an offensive coordinator, I need to make sure you can run. I need to make sure you can run. Oh, wait, I don't have time to make sure to see if you can run and do all these things because we can't get deep. And all of this is predicated on your story that I read this morning in the Star Tribune, startribune.com. You can find it via Ben's Twitter feed at Ben Goessling. Analysis. Vikes investments in defense paying off. And what hit me first was the scholarly approach to the game with the players they have.
Yeah.
Van Ginkel, I mean, I've referenced him as diagnosing a play twice as Antoine Winfield-esque.
Yeah.
And I don't think it can be disputed. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to have the career Antoine had, greatest corner in the history of the team. Van Ginkel's a brainiac. Cashman's a brainiac. So is Joshua Metellus, who now knows it all inside and out. Cam Bynum, super smart. Harrison Smith, super smart. Gilmore, super smart, like Patrick Peterson. So they've brought in players who quickly absorb what is request. I'm going to bring this up with O'Connell. Andrew Van Ginkel told me after the game, I never thought of this. I started an interview with him like, well, you almost had another one. You almost went Howell/Jones on Purdy. And he's like, I can't believe I dropped it. Then I asked him another question, and he said, well, playing in Miami, going against Mike McDaniel's offense every day in practice, that's Kyle Shanahan's offense.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's true.
I never thought of that.
Yeah.
But now it's super obvious, but that's the brainiac stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, he is able to say, okay, I've seen this stuff before, and here's where I know things are coming from. I mean, he's diagnosing route combinations. He's diagnosing, how quarterbacks are going about things in a way that you, like you said, you would expect a corner to be doing that rather than just, okay, my job is to beat my block or go after the quarterback. If you can make those kinds of plays, that adds a big wrinkle because now people have to start to plan for, we can't throw this to this guy's side because he may be able to jump it.
Right.
And that's a skill beyond just getting to the quarterback that, I mean, you hear Brian Flores talk all the time about versatility. He wants guys that can do 2 or 3 different things. And that's another form of that, I think, because those are game-changing plays. Either he comes down with an interception or they have to go away from a concept they want to run because they're worried about it. So, yeah, that is a level of intuition that we don't see from pass rushers very often. And it's been fascinating to watch that play out over the first couple of weeks here.
Ben Goessling, 9 to noon from the TCO studios at the Vikings Entertainment Network. 30 minutes from now, Kevin O'Connell joins the radio show. And Ben's inclusion is courtesy of Standard Heating and Air and StandardHeating.com. Back after this.
Miss stopping by our booth at the State Fair? Shop our KFAN Pro Shop now to stock up on your favorite new designs. Get them soon before they're gone. That's KFAN.com, keyword store to shop today. KFAN.com, keyword store.
How about last night, Mr. Scribe? The demise of Kirk Cousins has been greatly exaggerated, and good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, it was interesting to watch the end of that. I tuned in for kind of the later part of it, and some of the early stuff again about how much can he move, and he looked better, I thought, in that regard. And he admitted, I think, in a couple of pregame interviews, I think with Troy Aikman, that I'm not 100%.
Yeah.
I'm not able to move particularly well. But, yeah, that last drive, especially when the Eagles did not really heat him up at all, which surprised me a little bit. That
he was throwing some dimes in this. I watched the second half. He was throwing some dimes on third down, man.
Yeah, that the one in the last drive kind of into what John Gruden used to call the turkey hole, kind of the cover 2 hole behind the low corner and the safety. That was a nice throw. I mean, that's a throw you've seen Kirk make a lot over the years. But, awfully impressive final drive, especially for a guy, all this Monday night narrative stuff. I think he's won 4 of his last 5 now, and the last 2 beat 49ers.
Yeah, I thought that whole thing was dumb in the first place.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to draw a lot. The Washington run counts.
Sure.
But you got to look at the teams and the situations, and they were underdogs every time. And
just like you'd say with Sam Darnold, you'd have to look at some other factors around him.
Well stated.
Now he's in a different spot.
Well, and off Sam, I'm glad you brought that up, because I haven't had anybody say this to me, and I haven't seen it on social media. I think I heard the tail end of a conversation on NFL radio yesterday where somebody was intimating this. I'm going to bring it up to you. Like Darnold, all right? Had a chance to bury the Niners, and Darnold threw a pick, causing some to be like, see, an ugly pick from Sam. They are part of his DNA. Do you agree with that? And what do you see in Sam Darnold through two? Is that a fair narrative, as you would say? See, there, you had a chance to blow somebody out.
Yeah.
Very good team, and look what he just did.
Well, I think the trouble with this becomes, if you're going to take every mistake, every single play mistake, and say, see, same guy. I mean, there was a lot of that after the 4th and 8 against the Giants in 2022. See, same guy, Kirk Cousins. And that, there are probably people who would say, you know what, you should have just given Justin Jefferson a chance.
Yeah,
but
just throw it there.
Yeah. But I think in this particular case with Darnold, it's hard to say that. I mean, he did admit afterwards, I was probably getting a little too aggressive there. And that is part of him as a quarterback. But I think the instinct to be aggressive is different than sort of a choker's mentality, so to speak. I mean, you can be too aggressive and get yourself in trouble. Hello, Brett Favre. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're like cringing and falling away from the moment.
Right.
I think sometimes it's just an instinct that quarterbacks have, that you have to know when to turn that on, turn that off. And I think he would have admitted that after the game. Well, that wasn't a great spot, but I don't know that that's the same as saying it's the same old Sam Darnold.
Well, does anything short of perfection? I mean, unless he's absolutely perfect, and he's smart enough to know this as the season plays out, anything short of perfection will lend to that idea, right?
Yeah.
And so he has to be perfect. Otherwise, and maybe by week 15, people will lessen or soften their stance on nitpicking moments like that. PA and I watched the replay about 6 times off the radio yesterday, and we're trying to analyze, okay, if he waits a beat, Johnny Munt actually clears open as the safety moves inside on Trent Sherfield, who he ultimately threw at. I think it may have been JJ on the near side, who could you just give him a 50-50? I mean, PA and I, we wouldn't have enough time to do radio if we sat there and nitpick just even, 10 more of those plays on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
In the end, it's the in stride on the 97. It's the perfect kind of back shoulder, backside throw to Naylor to complete that third down. How much better in terms of, as much as we loved Kirk's anticipatory skills in certain routes and plays, on time, on target in this sort of offense, is there a more epitomizing moment on a third down like he did to Naylor on Sunday?
No.
So it's like the nitpicking, take the good with the bad, we get it. But man, Darnold's been looking good.
Yeah, it has been, and it's interesting. I got an email this morning from one of those, the Vegas sites that send out all the press releases about the odds, and they still had him as like the 6th most likely quarterback to get benched. So the message there is that the narratives are going to take a while to change. And O'Connell, after the game on Sunday, and even a little bit yesterday, you can tell he's starting to see that there's a moment to poke back at some of this stuff. And there was a tone from him on Sunday that was a little bit of, okay, how you like me now? And even a little bit yesterday, he said, I'm not interested in going back with Sam Darnold over the stuff that's happened in the past. It's time to just talk about what he is now. That does take a while, and he kind of admitted that on Sunday, that this stuff does take a while to change. But if he keeps doing this, I think it is going to change because...
Well, if Sammy beats the Jets in London and then in Dubai, that's going to be so nice.
With the 97, if you don't trust your quarterback, you don't go play action out of the end zone.
Yeah.
That's the end of the story.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to say. We can context is king all you want.
Right.
I'm telling you, if you don't trust your quarterback against Nick Bosa, you don't go play action. And they singled Nick Bosa, by the way. So we're going to single you with this guy.
And there was a blitz on that.
And you may blitz.
Yep.
And we're going to go play action because we know if this guy's able to step up, we have our guy on 2 safeties.
Yeah.
And you ain't going to stop that. So if you don't trust your quarterback, 0 chance you run that play.
Yeah, the guy that had the best pursuit angle in Justin Jefferson on that play might have been Tyree Walton, the back judge.
That?
Yeah, that was incredible.
Athletic, agility,
yes,
the spin.
It was unbelievable.
The spin by the goal line.
Yeah.
Then he stops.
Yeah.
It's like, stop, take a look and listen, except the other way. He stops. And then the hands go up slowly.
Yep.
My man was putting on a show, that back judge. Ben Goessling, Standard Heating and Air, standardheating.com. Why do you think Ty Chandler seems more confident than ever, or comfortable than ever before?
Yeah, I think some of the downhill runs that they're putting in may fit him a little bit better. I mean, I think he has been a guy that once he gets a full head of steam going into the line, probably makes him a better runner than trying to take steps through the backfield and pick a spot. He's a little more of I mean, this was the thing that Adrian always did best, and I'm not comparing the two, but when Adrian could get to the line with a full head of steam, he was awfully hard to stop, and Chandler certainly is not the same kind of back, but I think giving him that opportunity to hit with more speed has helped him, and he's shown that he can bounce off of that. He's had some nice moments of agility, and I think some of it may be that, but and maybe it may just be experience too, just getting more time here and getting a little more comfortable with what's going on.
Aaron Jones may be working with him more than we know too.
Yeah. I mean, there is a nice complement to that. I mean, Aaron Jones, I think, only had like 9 carries on Sunday. So, whether it's that or, like we're talking about some of the trust with Darnold, trusting yourself. O'Connell talked after the game. I asked him about that play. He said there's some self-talk that goes into like, okay, we're actually going to do this. We actually are going to, the look is here. I know that they could get a pick 6 or a safety, but we're actually going to try this. So, it's like a golfer saying, okay, I'm going to go for the green here. So all of that stuff working together is, it's been why they're 2-0.
Lastly, the unpredictability, through 2 weeks in the end, it's off the charts. I'm not a best or worst ever kind of guy. Let's just lay it out like this because there's a lot more of it. I'm just going to lay out a couple of tidbits about the unpredictability through 2 weeks the NFL is experiencing. The first overall pick in the draft last year, Bryce Young. Bryce Young benched.
Yeah.
Malik Willis won a game. Detroit lost at home. The Rams seem dead and buried. Joe Burrow is 0-2. Caleb Williams looks like Jaron Hall. And Pat Jones currently is in Defensive Player of the Year chats. How about all that, beloved scribe? It's all accurate.
It is, yes, it is. It's it's why we watch. It doesn't ever cease to entertain, and a lot of it is the unpredictability that you get things that the margin for error is so small that somebody making a play, somebody that has an instinct like in Andrew Van Ginkel, or a call like a Kevin O'Connell on Sunday on that 97-yarder that works. Yeah. Those things flip games and standings. It's just different than anything else. I mean, baseball, obviously, it's...
And the new kickoff bit sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah, it does.
It's like...
It'll get changed, I think.
Until like when? At the offseason?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's a one-year trial.
I mean, when Graham Gano and or Wisnowski or Moody... I mean, you got Myles Gaskin and Ty Chandler with a combined 6 kick returns in their lives at this level. Well, those are the ones to whom you're supposed to kick.
Yeah.
But no, just hoist the white flag, go and start on the 30.
Well, the interesting thing is if you can figure out, and we saw one of these on Sunday when the Vikings did kick it off, and then they get a penalty. Yeah. I mean, when we see so many penalties called on kick returns, if you are able to get to the point where you say, we can place this thing and get our coverage units down there and maybe force somebody into a block in the back or a holding on the return, you may be able to pin teams back. Mm-hmm. It may be more of an incentive for the kicking team to put it in play than the returning team to try to bring it out, especially if they feel like we're going to get pushed back and let's just start at the 30.
But it's fear over faith.
Yeah.
There's so much.
There's a lot of that with the kickoff.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, they are so afraid of a gotcha, that you have something put together that's going to be better than we do, and somebody's going to house it like a DJ Dallas.
Then you got the insane wretches like me that are going to come ask about it later. I mean,
or the fear over faith part of it, that we're worried our guy's not going to hit the landing zone. You can start at the 40.
Yeah.
The whole thing sucks.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Standard Heating and Air, standardheating.com. Thank you for stopping by.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Ben Goessling. That story about the investments in defense, really, really good. Star Tribune, startribune.com. News due north around the corner. Kevin O'Connell joins the radio show in 15 minutes.
Ben.
You got Nordo for all of 4.5 minutes.
Yeah, News to Nord is brought to you by the casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com.
Curly's here. I got to get in my new spot.
Still a handful of live racing days, so get to CanterburyPark.com for intel on that. But whether it's the NFL Pick'em game on Thursdays, you're feeling the Feld every day of the year. It's always a party at Canterbury Park. It was not a party in Cleveland last night. If you were a Minnesota Twins fan, PA, Minnesota Twins, they stake a 3-0 lead in the third inning. And Pablo Lopez goes 6 1/3, so you're feeling good about that. But it's 3-2, and Griffin Jax rolls in. And Griffin Jax has been one of the better relievers, not just for the Twins, but in Major League Baseball this year. Promptly gives up an eighth-inning 2-run shot to Manzardo. Ooh. Naylor scores, and it's a 4-3 victory for the Guardians. I'll admit I was super locked in on Monday Night Football last night, and Kirk going 5 of 6 for 70 yards and a Drake London touchdown to take the victory in Philly. I did not see this game, but there was some weeping and gnashing on social media about this potentially being one of the worst losses of the year.
Mm-hmm. Well, the timely nature of it, or lack thereof, plays into that. I think Detroit beat Kansas City. Bobby Witt Jr. had a big game. I saw in the box score, but I think Detroit won because it's like we said yesterday, Kansas City and Detroit are playing each other, so that had wild card implications to it right there.
It was a 7-6 bit.
It was, wow. And so now, what's that thing, 1.5? Damn. So we're the bottom wild card. Okay, we're the third wild card, and we have the Tigers and Softies team right on the heels.
Yeah, Tigers 1.5, and then the Mariners are 2, yeah.
Wow, so they get players back.
And you can't even look past this Boston series coming up this weekend. Wow. Boston 4 games out.
We got Boston.
But they have an opportunity. Yeah, this is an ugly week for Twins baseball if they can't walk away with a couple victories here.
And they have 3 more with Cleveland. I think they hooked Gavin Williams this evening, who's been pretty good at home, unless things changed in August or part of September. So our favorite 9 better giddy up right now.
News to Nord. We'll stick. We'll go back to the NFL as news came out that Bryce Young has been benched. PA. So thus far in 2024, the number one overall pick a year ago is 31 of 56 for 245 yards, 0 touchdowns, 3 picks. He's been sacked a total of 6 times. We talked yesterday mentioning Adam Thielen and some players having some moments of frustration. You're getting blown out by the Chargers on Sunday, so that's part of that as well. But in the end, it sounds like new head coach, this is per Schefter, the decision to bench number one overall pick Bryce Young is said to have come from head coach Dave Canales, GM Dan Morgan, and EVP Brant Tillis. As one source said, Dave Canales' first big boy decision. They're moving on from him. 2-16, I think, is his record. And already after everything they gave up, DJ Moore and all those draft picks, I think they still got to give up next year's second to the Bears to complete this transaction.
Oh, wow.
Which is going to be a very early second-round pick to the Bears. How about the move there?
Yeah.
And so everything's ugly there. Andy Dalton is going to take over for the foreseeable future.
Well, you know, if you read between the lines with a lot of things Kevin O'Connell said during training camp with J.J. McCarthy in the offseason was, if you don't have to use a talented kid right out of the gate, a rookie quarterback, then don't use him, because it's not necessarily down by a 0 or a 1. Like Houston with Stroud would be up there 8, 9, or 10. Okay, got him to the playoffs, rookie year, and they won a game. I mean, that's fantastic for a rookie. Other side of it's Bryce Young. The fact that the bad habits that they develop. See David Carr with the Houston Texans bludgeon 60 some odd times his rookie year. He never was the same. The habits they develop are so bad that sometimes they can't get out of their own way. So I think Canales here is making the decision that we got bad habits here. This ain't working, but he's talented, so we're going to sit back on him. I'd be surprised if he played again the rest of the year, so they can work on him behind the scenes. Kevin O'Connell joins 9 to noon next.